So this is an article from Deadline. It says, youths say no to sex and romance in plot lines of TV shows and movies. Yes to content focused on friendships, says a UCLA study. First of all, let's go through a little bit of the numbers here. So it says a UCLA study finds teens and young adults are not interested in romance and sex plot lines of most TV shows and movies, while a majority is interested in content about friendships and platonic relationships. The recent Teens and Screens report conducted by the Center for Scholars and Storytellers at UCLA found that 47.5% of teens and young adults ages 13 to 24 think that sex and romance are too prominent in TV shows and movies, and 51.5% want to see the content focused on friendships and platonic relationships. What I think is funny about that is, like, back in the day when the content was more hard to come by, right? Unless you had a scrambler in a box in your house. Like when it was harder to come by and Hollywood wasn't shoving it in your face, it felt taboo. Therefore, kids wanted to find it because kids want to find what they're not supposed to get their hands on. Right now, it's being shoved in their face and they're like, the kid's like, I don't want it now, which makes perfect sense, right? You push back on whatever they're feeding you. I think that might be just a reaction to how Hollywood has approached this issue. Right? And there is more, especially in like the HBOs, in the Showtimes, in the Cinemax, like all that stuff, you're going to find way more sex and nudity on stuff like that. Right? I don't see that. That's not going to be the truth in movies because you're still like the blockbusters are still going to be a majority PG-13 where this stuff just isn't going to be as prominent. But they go on here. It says 39% saying they particularly want to see more romantic, aromantic or asexual relationships on screen. Does that surprised me in a little bit? What do you think?
That part is strange to me. I can understand like, oh, I don't want to watch movies with sex and romance. Yeah. But is this suggesting that a character who is not having some sort of romantic story going on must be aromantic or asexual?
I imagine those are different things. Aromantic would just mean no relationships at all. Asexual might be that two asexuals can be in a relationship but just wouldn't pursue a sexual relationship.
Oh, this is complicated.
Yes.
I should have asked the definition.
That is the crux of it, right? Is they say that they want to see a more wide-ranging type of types of stories that fully encompass the ridiculously complex social.
I also read this as aromatic.
Yes.
At first.
Maybe that's what it meant.
I was like, they want to see more aromatic characters.
Smelly characters. That's just weird, right? What it is right now is that the youth of today have created far more confusing gender dynamics than we've ever experienced in human history. And the stories right now, Hollywood might pay lip service to them, but they don't expand upon them the way that they, as far as the kids actually have allowed them to permeate their everyday lives. So they want stories that seem to fit more with the way they feel society is going. And also they talk about the loneliness epidemic, that the youth of today are going through what they literally call a loneliness epidemic, meaning that kids are not getting in relationships, kids aren't losing their virginity until way older.
Do you think when like a 20-year-old who doesn't have any romantic life sees a movie with somebody just like having this dream date relationship, they're like, screw that person?
Yeah, no, you make that as a good joke, but I think that's actually part of it. Back in the day, when people weren't as beaten down and as negative about these types of things, something like that was seen as aspirational. And I think women in particular would see those types of stories as aspirational.
Yeah, everybody loves a good chick flick.
Right.
Prince Charming was a possibility, whereas now society's gotten all doom and gloom because you're on your phone all day, because the phone is feeding you bad news all the time. You're in a climate change. The world's ending. Why would I want to bring kids into that? There's all sorts of propaganda being fed to the youth of today.
Facebook was exposed for doing that.
Yeah.
For altering and tampering with people's algorithms to see how it affected essentially their mental health.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, there's literally
They're just
mind
lab
control.
ratting these
Yeah,
people.
studies being done on non-consenting young adults and individuals.
So what do you think is why do you think kids are avoiding these? Do you think it is like I believe that they've been doom and gloomed
Pestered
into this.
into it.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the ages are pretty young. I will say that, starting at 13. I don't know about you guys, but as a 13-year-old girl, I wasn't thinking about that kind of stuff. 13-year-old
Yeah.
boys, probably. So I think the age may have something to do with it. But in addition, like you said, it's like people are bombarded with this on Instagram all the time. OnlyFans is everywhere. Like anywhere you go, it's like we're a very, I don't know how
Who do you
else
think
to put
is
it,
more
but immodest, I guess.
who do you think
society.
is more lonely, men or women?
Don't they say men are?
Men.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think men.
And men in general probably don't gravitate towards those storylines as much anyways.
Also, I feel like I don't know because I'm not a man. I can't get in a man's head, but I feel like men's relationship or like friendships with other men is different than women's
Yes.
friendships with
Oh, yeah.
other
Yeah.
women. Like I talk to my girlfriends about everything.
Mm-hmm.
They're like my sisters, and I don't know that that's the same for
For
all
guys.
men in friendships.
I don't
What are your
know.
thoughts on this,
I don't know.
Brett?
I keep it to myself.
Yeah.
See?
Guys don't really talk about that kind of stuff.
Uh,
Unless you're like really good friends. Whereas I
yeah.
feel like for a girl, it's like that's kind of what makes you better friends. Is you talk about your personal problems and your personal life and thoughts and stuff.
We're more.
I don't.
like,
I don't think that
empathetic,
makes
yeah.
guys less
Yeah.
good friends. I think they just don't feel the need. They're not wired to have that discussion
Yeah.
with each other. They can. They do. Guys do that.
Something I think about too is
Do-do.
do.
the fact that it's not weird for women strangers to hug. Like if I meet a woman for the first time because it's through a mutual friend or whatever, it's not weird to like hug or shake hands or have some kind of physical contact. Whereas a guy is going to go a lot longer without physical contact because it's more taboo for a guy to just hug someone randomly. So in terms of loneliness, it's not just like companionship, but touch as well. That I think is way harder for men to come by. So it would be understandable that if you were deprived of this, you don't want to be constantly reminded of that on TV.
Who was I? Oh, who was it? That was there was just a bit that somebody was doing. He said, "I hate PDA unless I'm doing it." who the hell was this? Was it Jeff Dye? One comedian was just. He's like, oh yeah, I hate PDA. It's disgusting. It's filthy. Unless, of course, I'm doing it. Then it's awesome. Like, that's the because you see it, and when somebody else is doing it, you're like, oh, it's disgusting. Stop doing that. But maybe there's just a twinge of jealousy from the people there. So this is a quote from the woman who worked on the study. It says, "We know that young people are suffering an epidemic of loneliness and they're seeking modeling in the art they consume. While some storytellers use sex and romance as a shortcut to character connection, it's important for Hollywood to recognize that adolescents want stories that reflect the full spectrum of relationships." Adding, the recent studies show that young people are having less sex than their parents did at their age, and many prefer to stay single. Yeah, because relationships are a minefield these days, and social media means that you could be named and shamed in any type of interaction that just doesn't go right. So when you're constantly on edge, when you're told that the world is ending in 5 years, when you're worried that every reaction you're doing is going to be filmed and made into a TikTok, or something, you're going to be called a bad name. Why wouldn't the youth of today be unbelievably on edge about how their behavior will be interpreted by the people that they're trying to engage with, whether romantically or otherwise? It says, this is the other part that I really like. It says, romantic tropes ranked 4th on a list of adolescents' most disliked stereotypes, which include a dislike of relationships being necessary to be happy, male and female leads always having to end up together romantically, and love triangles, which they make fun of because they say that back in the day, like with the Hunger Games and Divergent and all of these movies, like they all had love triangles.
Wednesday.
And, what was the one that Mary likes? The
Wednesday?
The Twilight.
Twilight.
But the point being
like
that
Teletubbies?
there's a disconnect here between the people creating the art and the people who are consuming it, and it's just the kids' experiences are going to be very different, and it's hard for a storyteller who doesn't understand that to make an interesting story about that, where it's like, am I going to tell a story about a group of friends without raising the stakes of the relationships. How do you make that interesting? That can be done, but it has to be done by very, very talented writers. And I don't know if Hollywood is really employing them in those roles right now. I don't know. It's I don't know what they mean by full spectrum of relationships, but they're going to need better writers if they want to do that.
I can understand, like not wanting a bunch of sex scenes.
Oh, absolutely.
Like
yeah.
you
I've
ever
always found
been
that
watching
weird.
a movie with your parents and you're just like, oh,
Yeah.
I didn't know this was in here.
Yeah. It was like, why?
You're like, I don't even want to finish the movie. I want to make an excuse to leave.
The other thing about it is like very rarely, like sex scenes don't bother me unless if they feel earned.
I feel
Most
like
of the
they're
time-
unnecessary
Yes.
when they're graphic.
Even
Most
when I'm by
typically.
myself, I'm like, I feel like I'm not supposed to see this.
Derp Space 9 for $20 says, I think young men today experience loneliness. As we age, it gets much better because guys are more focused on objects. Women are more social. Old age is harder on women who have suddenly or slowly cope with invisibility. Have to suddenly cope with invisibility.
Interesting.
Yeah, I don't know. That's
Good point.
for me. It's a little bit different because I'm kind of more of I'm an asocial person. Is that a thing? Is that I have no idea if that's a thing. I'm
Antisocial.
I'm not. I don't think I'm not antisocial. I'm
No.
not bad with people, but I'm also just not the most likely to go out and go into a large group of people. So that stuff has never really bothered me. I find interpersonal problems to be extremely distracting for me. Like I don't like to deal with that type of stuff, especially if I'm working. I don't like the drama that comes with that stuff. So that's just me personally. But for these
agree.
types of stories, it's like it's still storytelling, right? So stakes have to be involved. And it's very hard to tell a story about a group of 4 friends who are just buds. I've also noticed an abundance of younger people not liking conflict in their movies. They want the characters to get along. Which is weird, like because characters have to not get along.
Yeah, that's the
for
whole
there
point.
to be a
To have
story.
like a protagonist and antagonist.
Yeah, right.
You know what the perfect movie would be for these people? Is Stand By Me.
Ah,
All the characters get along. They all love each other. There's no romance. And it's wholesome in the end. A little sad, but wholesome.
Do you? So for me, sex scenes don't bother me if it feels like they earned the scene. Very rarely does it feel
If
like
it
they
is
earned the
important to the context of the film, and I also think that like sexual stuff can be shot in a way that it's not so in your face and it's more implied. But I don't really want to like know what an actress looks like naked, or like there should never be a naked dude. That should never be on camera. I don't want to see
Unnecessary.
that. I don't
Nobody
think women want to
does.
see that.
Women don't, men don't.
Like when a movie shows that, I'm just like, my day is ruined.
It's like when
There should be a shot black screen that just says warning. It's about to show a
There
penis.
was like when I was trying to watch the Halo TV series, and I'm like, I don't need to see Master Chief's ass. I don't.
Even like when we went and saw Oppenheimer, I was
Yeah.
like, I didn't need to see your boobs. I'm sure somebody
Oh yeah, you two
appreciated
were the
it.
ones that both told me within 24 hours.
Weird looking.
Yeah.
Weird looking.
I don't want to be rude, but like if you put them out there for the world to see, people are gonna
Weirdly shaped
see 'em and
pears.
think,
And everyone's entitled to their opinions. I just
So-
thought it was fun.
It says adolescents are also looking to see themselves represented on screen. Again, another thing that I don't understand. Like I don't like. I'm boring. I don't want to see people that look or act like me on screen necessarily. I'm not interesting.
you see that every day.
I don't want that. So it says their viewpoint has shifted from the last year when the topic adolescents most wanted to see was last described. It says they wanted to see lives unlike my own. In 2023, that position fell to number 9, and lives like my own rocketed to number 2. So kids are, I think that's a growth in narcissism and our extreme focus on ourselves these days. Right? Like we are kind of a more self-obsessed culture than we've ever had in years prior.
Yeah.
And despite adolescent preferences for original stories, superheroes still ranked 4th among the topics they most want to watch. I think that will fall
That's
steadily
interesting.
as well.
That's like my least favorite genre of film.
Yep.
superheroes.
Used to be cool when you had just like Superman and Batman. Now when it's like
It's
every
been
movie
overdone
is,
too much.
So here's the other thing. It says adolescents are looking to media as a third place where they can connect and have a sense of belonging. And with frightening headlines about climate change, pandemics, and global destabilization, it makes sense that they are gravitating towards what's most familiar in those spaces. That's where, like, a lot of times the term bathtub television came from, meaning that you want stuff that's soft and doesn't raise your anxiety levels. I make the joke all the time that there's the 10,000 new shows to watch, the 5 or 6 comfort shows that you have because you've seen them so many times, you know exactly what's going to happen. I think that's become more prominent now, especially for someone like me. I love rewatching shows that I've seen before more than, like, for work, it's because, like, when I have to watch new stuff, I have to pay way closer attention, right? But yeah, as the world feeds you more negative news and propaganda, why wouldn't you look to your media to be somewhat soothing rather than... But the average film director, that's not what they're looking to do. The average film director wants to raise and lower your emotions. They want to take you on a ride. But people don't want that when they can get plenty of that from the actual news, right? So what's the point? They also point out that they desire authenticity more than anything. Mr. Beast's YouTube channel took #1 for most authentic media, followed by series and movies, Stranger Things, Heartstopper, Barbie, and The Summer I Turned Pretty. I still can't believe people watch that show, but people do.
Such a cringe name. Sorry.
And for these movies and stuff like this, I just, like, I find Mr. Beast fascinating because, look, he is that. He is just the most normie thing a person can watch. And when you're bombarded by the world's going to end in 5 years, climate change, Donald Trump is destroying the planet, why wouldn't you look to escape to just a guy who blows up stuff and has games?
Same with every industry, music too.
Yeah.
Remember when Running Up That Hill blew up because of Stranger Things?
Not the best version. I don't care what anyone says. The Kate Bush version of that song is not the best version of that song.
Oh, really? I didn't even know there's another version. But
there's like 10,000 versions of that song. But the placebo version of that song remains the best version. Don't at me.
Well, the lyrics of that song are really beautiful. And I remember at one point someone being like, I don't get why this song is blowing up again right now. Like, it's not that good of a song. But I think it's the authenticity of the song. They talk about God. They talk about real stuff. They talk about swapping places with someone. And I think that compared to what we normally hear on the radio, Taylor Swift, not to just always single her out, but any musician or most music that we hear on the radio today, top 40, it is not something that evokes true, genuine feeling that every person can relate to across the board. So, I love that song. I had never heard it before Stranger Things, but I think just as another example of that, that is why sometimes random things will blow up because it actually evoked a feeling in people that they like forgot they had, because most of what's being put out there is just being pumped out, meaningless. Doesn't have any like underlying like feeling to it.
I think Taylor Swift has found some magical formula where if you have a combination of antidepressants and birth control in your system, it just explodes when you hear her music and you love it.
That is a great way to describe her. She's like the human embodiment of
like,
that.
It's like Taylor Swift comes on and suddenly the antidepressants, the birth control, and the pumpkin spice latte all rise up in your system, and you start doing a weird hyena dance around a theater, and it is what it is. Thanks for watching. Listen to full episodes of Pop Culture Crisis on Spotify.
Keep up with us on social media and make sure you subscribe and ring that bell so you never miss the show. Bye, guys.